morning, world. This is Steve Rao on World Politics, World Edition, and I greet you live today. I'm sorry for the dim lighting. I've got some issues with my computer, so I'm using an alternate computer. Hopefully, just wanted to welcome you all, and today we're going to begin our discussion wherever you are in the world on President Donald Trump, former President Trump, entering with a bandage on his ear to an electric crowd at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, where just shortly before his appearance, he announced United States Senator J.D. Vance, a 39-year-old junior senator from the state of Ohio, to be his vice presidential nominee. Vance, the author of Hillbilly Elegy, also a Netflix movie, is a darling of Silicon Valley, with many investors and venture capitalists in his corner, more liberal-leaning, some of them in political philosophy. Also, his marriage to an Indian American woman from the state of Andhra Pradesh, which we know as Telugu. She is a Yale graduate along with him, and everybody is quite surprised with this announcement, although it shouldn't be that much of a surprise, as pretty much Senator Vance has been anointed as the heir apparent to the Trump MAGA movement, and they want to make history already have made history by him becoming the youngest candidate for vice president in the history of the United States, or to serve on any presidential ticket, the first millennial to do so. So we had arrived into a new era, and perhaps J.D. Vance could become the first millennial president of these United States. Trump is really watching. Lester Holt had an interesting interview yesterday. Biden's still standing his ground, but it does seem like the energy, the electricity, beginning to feel a lot like 1980, Shining City on the Hill with Ronald Reagan. Things definitely seem to be going in Donald Trump's favor, with all eyes on him and everyone grateful that he wasn't assassinated. 1 centimeter turned to the left, and we would be at his funeral this week. And I'm going to go ahead and get the thing started. We're going to talk about some other news around the world. I'm here for about 30 minutes. Mark will go ahead and get started, but I think the political theater is really the issue at hand today.
The political theater is definitely the issue at hand. We'll bring in Rick Rosner and others. I was actually surprised because they did have some of the people that spoke at the Republican convention, including Marjorie Taylor Greene and our own Mark Robinson. And one of the things that surprised me, I don't know if it surprised the rest of y'all, but we do know that sometimes Mark Robinson can be full of a lot of rhetoric, and sometimes his speeches can be very kind of like religiously oriented and definitely kind of long and all along those lines. But it's my understanding that this particular speech, which is probably short for a speech at a convention, whether it be Republican or Democratic, was only about 3.5 minutes. And he was actually focusing on some of his family values and some of his things in the way that he grew up and all along those lines. But it was not the kind of speech that had been kind of the more toxic one. So I'm wondering if he was told to tone it down, because we do know that that is something that political candidates had been told after that assassination attempt, was to tone down some of the rhetoric and all along those lines. So I was just surprised at the fact that it was a much shorter speech than you might have expected, and it didn't have that much controversy and all along those lines. I hadn't heard yet how Marjorie Taylor Greene's speech went, because we know she can be a firebrand as well. But Rick, what's your thoughts? Because like I said,
a couple just fun little details. So Trump gets grazed either by glass or by a bullet to the ear, and all day Sunday, no Band-Aid on his ear. No, he's golfing, and then he shows up to the convention with a big old gauze patch on his ear to make sure everybody remains aware that that's just good stagecraft. Also stagecraft, when the Secret Service tackled Trump to the ground, his shoes came flying off, and he was yelling, "Get my shoes, get my shoes." And there's video that shows why he was so desperate to get his shoes. You could see the lifts coming out of his shoes. Trump claims to be 6'3". He's probably more like 6'1.5" with lifts in his shoes. So that was a fun detail revealed there.
Hey, well, one of the other things that I saw that was quite interesting, and not trying to get us in trouble on any of the platforms that we're on and all along those lines. But I did see a couple of Instagram posts, and some of them were showing the Secret Service when they were protecting former President Trump and all along those lines. And there were some people that were wondering about what looked like smiles on their face and all along those lines. So there have been some people that have been wondering about the nature of the attack and whether it was, as you just said, staged and all along those lines. And
well, not staged, no. And really, in a time of crisis where you forget yourself and you're not responsible for the expression on your face. People have different reactions, and that smile, could be just like anything. If you're going to claim conspiracy off of people's facial expressions, that holds less water than anything else.
You got that crazy Mickey Mouse thing going on, Nick, again. So I don't know what's going on with your computer and all, but you got that going on. So you might have to adjust that while we try to get you on and all that. But yeah, we got that Mickey Mouse voice thing.
I made what turned out to be kind of a false claim on Twitter yesterday by mistake, where there's a picture of the bullet zipping by Trump's head. Just the camera happened to, there's a streak that's the bullet. And I said, well, there's no way that bullet could have hit the top of his ear if you look at the perspective of the thing. And so he must have been hit by glass from the teleprompter. And I corrected that because then I did more research and found out that the shooter got 8 bullets off before they killed him. So yeah, the bullet that was whipping by his head is not the one that hit him, but there were 7 other bullets that might have hit him. So I'll put up bullshit there and then have to correct my error.
People have to correct their errors and everything. I was actually talking to a co-worker at one of the places that I work, not Pod TV, but another one. And it is actually, they have offices there, and they are a sheriff deputy. And as a sheriff deputy, they were wondering somewhat about the nature of the shooter and the response to the shooter and all along those lines, because they even had some questions from their standpoint, because they are definitely have shot those kind of guns, and they know that those guns can be very deadly and all along those lines. So they did have some questions just about the how it was handled, both by the Secret Service and others as well. So like I said, that was a conversation that I had literally yesterday evening. And I was getting ready to leave work, and he was getting ready to leave work as well, because he does have a rental office at the Hayti Heritage Center. So Michael LeMay was definitely having some thoughts about the attack and how the attack took place, and I might get into further conversation with him later, because he is one of my law enforcement friends and all along those lines. But Nick, hopefully we can hear you now.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, first, let's dismiss all the conspiracy idiots that are out there. I hate even listening to them. They read too much science fiction, and everything's a dream world. So all their motions are summarily dismissed with prejudice. Please, let's not even go there. But now let's go look at reality, which has nothing to do with conspiracy theorists and their moronic thinking. If they hired the right security person, they needed somebody who's a little bit paranoid. Okay. And they didn't have that person, because a paranoid person would look and say, oh, there could be some people on the roofs that would be shooting, and we didn't clear the perimeter. We cleared the perimeter, but not the roof side. Apparently, in the entire organization, the person who headed it wasn't paranoid enough. You've really got to find somebody who's extremely paranoid, and that there's a shooter under every blanket to run that agency. And if they did, they would have cleared the roofs 150 yards out, et cetera, because they would realize that is a possibility. In other words, I don't know if they've ever worked with paranoid people, but they're perfect for that type of position.
No, Nick, I've worked with paranoid people before and everything, and I do agree with what you're saying, because as I told you before,
you need a
paranoid on this show a couple of times. I have definitely worked some events, nothing as big as this rally. Well, actually, I don't know how many people were at the rally, so and others may have been similar sizes and everything, and we definitely had to secure perimeters and had to secure stuff, and it can be just a regular music festival or a number of other things. And sometimes we have the sheriff department or the police department or other people that are involved that help us with those security planning and everything. And sometimes it can be something simple, because some of the festivals that I have worked have had a Woodstock-like reputation. So sometimes they would be
but
dealing with the drug culture as well and everything along those lines. So definitely a lot of those things were put into perspective. And you are correct that I'm surprised that even though it was on the far perimeter and it wasn't right there in the maybe footprint of the event and everything, a lot of times you try to secure things outwards and everything. Because the first time that I ever ran that I can recall, I might have done some in the 60s, but I don't have as deep of a recollection as that. But if you remember, there was a Greensboro massacre of some people that were affiliated with the Communist Party, and I went to a kind of defense rally after that had happened, and I think that was way back in, like, I want to say the 80s or something like that, and I'd have to look it up the time frame. But I do remember going to a support protest in Greensboro and literally looking up as we were marching down the Greensboro streets, and yes, there were several sharpshooters and FBI type agents that were up on various roofs, kind of like most monitoring those that might be coming to interrupt us, as well as what was going on in the protest itself and everything. So I think that was the first time that I have a deep memory of that, because I just remember as a fairly young man looking up going like, oh yeah, I guess we are safe and everything, because there were definitely several sharpshooters that were there.
So it's tough to, it's hard to stop crazy. There's a saying I tried to dig up, I couldn't find it, but somebody said a couple decades ago that anybody can assassinate the president as long as they're willing to sacrifice their own life, as this guy did. I mean, luckily he was unsuccessful, but it's hard to stop crazy, especially given the public campaigning model that we follow here in the U.S. Joe Biden, talking to Lester Holt yesterday, said that he's done 22 public appearances since the debate and met thousands of people. And that's what we expect from him, to show that he's able to do his job as the president. And it's a different model than, say, North Korea, where, that guy, anytime he appears any place, it's people who are carefully selected.
Yeah. Well, there's some actually good news that took place on this. It got rid of talking about Biden and his dementia.
Yeah, we definitely got rid of talking about that.
But all of a sudden, we're so ADD in this country. All of a sudden, that story's gone. In other words, and now we have
that story being gone. One of the things that they said they wanted to do, and I kind of alluded to that, not just the conspiracy theory stuff, but I alluded to that in my part of the conversation, not so much Steve's opening and all along those lines. But there was a ask for people to tone it down, and like I said, I did not hear, and I have not heard yet, how Marjorie Taylor Greene handled her speech. But a 3.5-minute speech, and him basically focusing on his family values, does seem like a toned down version for what Mark Robinson did on day one and everything. And two things I gotta actually give my self credit. I gotta tease you, Nick, and everything, and even you to some degree, Rick, because I think at the end of yesterday's show, people were asked who would be the vice presidential pick, and I'm the one that said that I thought it would be J.D. Vance. Unfortunately, I didn't put any money on it, so I probably should have been a betting man on that case and all along those lines. And the other thing I'm going to tease y'all about, because this actually goes back to probably a month or so ago and everything, but I said that it has been multiple decades since I have been in Milwaukee, because I graduated in 1984, in December of 84. So we're talking about almost 40 years ago that I got my degree in journalism that you love to tease me about on Media Monday and all along those lines. But as I recall Milwaukee, and there's friends of mine that are still in the Midwest tell me it is a relatively liberal city. So I was actually somewhat surprised that they picked it for the Republican convention. But I think I said a couple of times that I expected that there would be protests. And we actually showed one of the protests on the All Around show, which Dr. Anthony does. So there were protests already in day one, and I expect there'll be protests the rest of the week as well and everything, because of what I know about the nature of that town. It's got two cities that are very well known, not just Marquette University, my alma mater, but it's also got University of Wisconsin Milwaukee, which is an offshoot of UW-Madison and everything. So definitely just those along, and in addition to the technical schools, I knew that the students and the millennials would probably be out protesting, and it looks like I was correct about that. So what is our thoughts about this, and do we expect
Well, I just
protests?
you talked about Mark Robinson, not saying crazy stuff. This is, the national convention is the beginning of the period where you pivot towards the center. You say all your extreme stuff to win over primary voters who tend to be more extreme. And then with the national convention, you say, you know, we're for everybody and we're all about family values. And we've never heard of Project 2025. What's that? You try to sweep up the independent voters who, as has been noted here, are now half of all voters.
Right.
You know, 50% of voters are independents, and that leaves 25% each for the Republicans and the Democrats.
Hey, Rick, just really quickly, I got to teach you about something else that's entertainment moment and everything. I was looking at Instagram, and we talk about the nature of politics and all along those lines. And there was a certain president a long time ago that, well, not that long ago, but he was definitely there for a short period, and he did a kind of a TV stunt that I don't think anybody to this day, whether it was Biden or even Trump, would do, and all along those lines. But apparently Gerald Ford, because I saw this on a Instagram post and everything, actually showed himself in the kitchen, because I guess he was trying to demonstrate to the Americans that he was just a regular old American. So I think it showed him trying to make toast or something along those lines. But he was actually captured by some TV crews actually having a moment where he was fixing his own breakfast, as opposed to the staff and the people that are usually around these high-powered politicians. So I was just wondering, do you think we'll see anything like that from either Biden or Trump as they try to have a homespun kind of moment and everything? Because I was actually quite pleased when I saw that clip.
The homespun moments you often see in the Christmas videos, that they try to do a little skit with the president and the first lady, and they're usually kind of embarrassing, but still charming because at least they're trying. You know, the history of presidents in TV has been, well, checkered.
Checkers.
Nixon saved his career. Vice President Nixon, in the 50s, he was Eisenhower's vice president. He got accused of corruption, and he went on TV and he made the Checkers speech.
Right.
And it was like, yeah, you're accusing me of this, and I didn't do any of it except for one thing. Somebody did give me this puppy, and he talks about his Cocker Spaniel puppy Checkers, and you know I won't give anything, I'm not giving back this dog, and that saved his career. Then his later career was wrecked in the first televised debate because Nixon thought it wasn't manly to wear makeup. And they wanted to hit him with a bunch of makeup, which back then the TV lights were super hot and harsh, and they made you sweat, and you needed to wear a thick layer of pancake makeup to absorb the sweat. He didn't do it. Kennedy wore the makeup. Nixon looked like he had a very sweaty upper lip, and very not trustworthy, and that caused Nixon to lose the election.
Yeah.
It certainly was a contributing factor to that election. I would agree. One problem that I think the U.S. faces is that we don't really address the issues. And I know that they're distancing themselves from Project 2025, but something Project 2025 actually does do is they start addressing issues, as opposed to, oh, this person is married to an Indian woman who's an attorney. This person's from a white hillbilly. I mean, it's all about race, ethnic, where you're from. Nobody discusses the issues. I mean, it's like the issues aren't important.
Let's be fair about this. J.D. Vance is the one that came up with this notion of being the hillbilly elegy. He's the one that wrote the book and came up with the title and everything. And yes, there are a number of people that love to celebrate their Southern roots and everything. So it's not always just race in the sense of black, white. It can also be in the terms of cultural groups and all along those lines. And apparently that was something that he was quite proud of. And in addition to his being married to this Indian woman and everything along those lines. But definitely. And the other thing about JD Vance is that apparently he has, and there've been a couple of others, because I think there's a woman from Charlotte that's going to be speaking as well that was part of the school board movement. And apparently there's been some people that have switched parties, gone from Democrat to Republican. I don't know how many that have done the opposite, even though I'm sure that there are some in that space. But there is a young African-American woman that I think will be speaking either today or tomorrow that apparently was very much involved in the Charlotte School Board. And I think she finished either sixth or something like that. She did not win it, but she will be speaking at the Republican convention. And I think she's speaking as a like unaffiliated, so not necessarily as a Republican. I think she said something to the effect of she will go anywhere where people will listen to her and are interested in the things that she's concerned about. So she's concerned about some of the things that are going on in our school system and what she feels is some indoctrination kind of stuff going on in our school system. Whether you agree with that or not, this is a issue that she is passionate about, and she will be one of the people that will speaking and be speaking. And like I said, I think that is tomorrow, because I think Franklin Graham is tomorrow as well. If I get around to getting her name out, put that out there as well.
Lord, I can't wait.
What's the interest? JD Vance is a senator from Ohio, and Ohio is a really interesting state geographically and politically because it's got, it's a Midwestern state, and and those states are smaller than the Western states, which are gigantic. But for a medium-sized state, it's got so many distinct regions and cities, each with their own personality. Down in the south of the state, around Cincinnati, that is just across the river from Kentucky, and then you move a little further east, and it's just across the river from West Virginia. So the bottom half of Ohio does have a lot of people you can call hillbillies, and then you move up and you're further up, you're pretty close to Pittsburgh, and Ohio's just is a bunch of different areas. Also,
but Rick, you can say this. But Rick, you can say the same thing there about. Because I oftentimes tease North Carolina, even though I am a proud North Carolina native, but we are the state that gave you both Jesse Helms and Terry Sanford, and definitely have some various regions as well, whether it's the beaches, whether it's the mountains, whether it's the big cities like down around Mecklenburg and the Charlotte area, or the Wake and Durham County areas, or even down in the Triad where Greensboro and Winston-Salem are, as well as others. But definitely we have some of that same things that you're talking about Ohio with its different kind of mixtures. And I would argue, because in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is one of your states, even though I used to go visit it for a while and everything, but I really think of Florida, which I know you've got some affiliation with, Nick, as being 3 states in one, or maybe even 4 states, because there's northern Florida, there's central Florida, and then there's down there around Miami and the southern Florida area, and there might even be a little bit further to the west. It might be like Gulf. So that's why I said at least 3, maybe 4 regions in Florida. But would you agree with that, Nick? That's one of your stomping grounds.
At least. I mean, the thing is, Florida is so divided, people have no idea. In other words, if you're up in the Panhandle, you're really in the deep South. So that's people from the University of Miami, where I'm from, look down on the people from Florida State, because we don't recognize Florida State to be part of Florida. Florida State's really part of Alabama. It just so happens to be part of Florida. And then in the coastlines, I mean, you run into all these various different communities. So I would say Florida is a very diverse state. There's just absolutely no question about it. And it's really a very fast growing state. So we have a lot of Yankees that go in. We do have some Southerners, but we don't have the Southern tradition that you guys have in North Carolina. And frankly, we don't have all the race garbage that you guys have in North Carolina, nor the race garbage that exists in the Deep South, because Florida really didn't participate very much, if any, in the Civil War.
Hold on a second. I gotta call you on that. I gotta call you on that, Nick. Because if you remember, there was Liberty City. Liberty City was very race-based, and Miami definitely had some serious race-based activity.
Liberty City and Overton when they went crazy, but that was years ago in the 1980s. But what I'm saying is that they do not have the history that North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, and the Deep South do. So you just don't grow up with all this race stuff that you guys grew up with in the Deep South. So when I came here, I started listening to it, and just like all over the place, and it doesn't exist in Florida.
You
sorry,
say that, but I've got friends that live
you
in
have
places like Jacksonville and other
community
places.
from
So
Cuba
I
that-
would argue that I don't necessarily agree with you, but you're entitled to that
Well, you
opinion.
know,
But I would
something
say
I
that
was-
there are a number of people that have been involved in various race issues, whether it's been in sports, entertainment. I mean, shucks, they had a whole race
I'm
discussion
talking about
around Disney.
Florida. I'm talking about Florida and Miami. Now, Miami does have a Latin American twist to it because the thing is, it is like a Latin American city. A lot of people from Cuba came over during the boat lifts. It's a whole different world. But Miami, when I moved there from Tampa, it is two different worlds. I mean, because in Tampa, you did not have the Cuban community there. Your Cuban community actually did come in, but it was like in the early 1800s. And they settled in Ybor City, and it was a very small community. So Tampa's totally different. And you go down to Naples, they're all retirees. They're Yankees from the Midwest. And if you go up to Palm Beach, they're all Yankees from the Northeast.
Well, there's a lot of Yankees, and yes, there's a lot of transplants. Because, like I said, I did work in Boca Raton, and yes, there are a lot of transplants and everything. But like
Boca
I said,
Raton's a very
go
Jewish
see
community.
a friend of mine that used to do
It's
later on
really
this
Jewish
afternoon.
community.
He used to do photography for a number of people, both sports and entertainment, and is a Miami person from the Jewish community, and all along those lines. So me and
That's
Mark
because
Reed have
Boca
been
Raton is a
friends
Jewish
for a
community.
while and everything, and even he would argue that there has been some race discussions and all along those lines. But that's we'll get past that on another show and everything along those lines. I did have a question because we are World Edition, and I did have a couple of world things that Steve did not get to that I wanted to get to as well, including one that is actually dealing with something that people are passionate about to some degree, but sometimes they're not as passionate, which is animal rights and even like the way that we treat animals. Because I just saw, I think it was a day or two ago, one of my neighbors had their dog outside and had not put any water out there. But you know, people are quick to temper, so I didn't like call them on it, but I surely thought about it and everything. But in Romania, because there was a 19-year-old woman, a teenager, that was mauled to death, and because of that, Romania has realized that maybe they have a bear overpopulation, so they're going to cull, which basically means they're going to kill 500 bears to curb the overpopulation after the deadly attack. So Romanian lawmakers more than double allowed bear kills to prevent attacks. So I just wonder our thoughts about that, because you know, bears can be very big, and these look like grizzly bear size and everything. I'm not sure if they're grizzlies, because I'm not sure what kind of bears they got in Romania, but at the picture I'm looking at, it definitely looks very big and everything. But what is our thoughts when we decide that maybe the animals, because we even saw that to some degree around North Carolina and other places as well, so the animals are invading and maybe they need to be have their population culled. I'm sure that sometimes they wish that our population would get culled so they could protect themselves and everything, but they don't have that capability, because I haven't seen a bear yet with a gun. But I was just wondering you and Rick's thoughts about this notion of at least.
My thoughts are all crazy.
Oh, good. Let's hear it.
Last week, we went to a dude ranch, a ranch that my wife's been going to since she was a little kid. And for a birthday trip, we went up there. So we were riding very slow horses. You know, we were looking at cows and goats and, you know, all manner of animals that you don't see in the city, bats at night. And I was thinking, like, Elon Musk claims to have a chip he can put in your head so you can like operate machinery. If you're paralyzed, you can do stuff with just your thoughts. And I was thinking, what happens to this ranch in 20 years when they start chipping the horses to make it easier so you can have telepathy with them? So, you know, the cowboy, you know, instead of working the reins, can just be like, think, hey, go after that cow, and the horse gets the thought directly in his head. I think things are going to get weird with animals in the future. And with people, because we're going to have chips in our head that will give us.
You might be right. That may not be as far-fetched as people think. You know,
No, I don't think that's far-fetched at all. But what is your thoughts about this notion of protecting yourself? Because yeah, you can have overpopulation. I think we saw that in the like the plain states when their bison used to be very popular, and I don't think that they're as popular now as they used to be because of the fact that we kind of culled their population and everything. But what is your thoughts around this notion coming out of Romania, where, and just given it was a sad occasion, that's why they decided to go after the bears, but apparently they're going to try to get rid of some.
All right, so in the future, they take the bears and they put chips in their head, and then you get to think at them and go, look, here's the deal. You know, if you come and bother us, we're going to kill you. But if you just, like, you know, stay in the woods, you'll be cool.
Yeah. Well, it's back to might makes right. Unfortunately, we're the ones who get to make those particular decisions. Now, I'm glad, Rick, you're thinking about the chips, because what I do is I've always wondered which animal would win a fight. In other words, a bear versus a lion, or a bear versus a crocodile. And and they actually have some of them on YouTube, but not a lot. And years ago, the Romans actually did take animals from different sectors of the world and put them together in the Colosseum to see who would win. But since
I'm going to steal that for my book.
It's called gladiators. And sometimes they would also use.
The Romans had animal gladiators, so they could tell you, because sometimes you wonder. I mean, like, the lion's king of the beasts, but a polar bear is not a small animal. So if you put a polar bear with a lion, then they're from two different sectors, so they don't meet. Who's going to win?
That makes a lot of sense, and I can see that in everything. But coming back to the political side, I just wanted to have that side around the animal species and everything. But we are not the only one that is divided, because apparently people are asking the world who is Vaughan Gething, because apparently he is the outgoing First Minister of Wales, because we do know that they just elected some folks there in the UK and around those areas. So apparently he stepped down after 4 of his colleagues quit. So he is definitely quitting after only 4 months in the job. So definitely he getting after Starmer came and won. Keir Starmer, I believe is his name, and everything. He has now said, I don't think I like this particular government, so I'm outie. So he definitely went ahead and stepped down, and some of his colleagues quit. So it just seems like there's a divide even in the UK, where some people wanted to be more conservative, some people wanted to be more liberal. And there's also the notion, just to bring up another topic really quickly, but we can talk about both of them, about shootings as well, because I know that there was people that were concerned about the response to the Jewish community, and I can definitely have passion for that, as I have Jewish people that are in my family and friend circle, including dad's significant other and all along those lines. But there was also people that were wondering about the Islamic community, and apparently there was a rare shooting by multiple attackers in a Shiite mosque in Oman that killed 5 and wounded a number of others. And guess what? The gunman was shot dead in that shooting as well. So it looks like there was an attack that took place in that Middle Eastern country. And once again, the shooter was taken out, because I guess folks are like, no, we don't want you up here shooting up our religious institutions. And we know that even happened with, was it Dylan Ruth in Charleston, South Carolina, a few years back and everything. But like I said, and the Israel war is still going on, because they're saying U.S.-made munitions were used in the Israeli strike on a Gaza school that killed 22. And that's according to some hospital officials that say that an airstrike killed 17 Palestinians in a military declared safe zone. So I didn't know if y'all had any thoughts, particularly about some of this division, not just here, but in other parts of the world, and folks wanting to use, you said might makes right. Some people want to use the gun to make right as well, whatever they are thinking is right.
Well, see, my thoughts are really based on quality of the candidates. In other words, you would think, if you ever go interview for a job at a major law firm, Mark, they really cull through resumes, backgrounds. I mean, just everything. In other words, you almost have to be perfect, picture perfect, to get a job with a major law firm in the United States. Okay. And frankly, there are a lot of good people out there. I mean, there's tons of them that are really good and qualified. Now I look at our political qualifications and how we elect our officials. It is really poor. And you get some really poor candidates. And the real problem I'm having with the election is that, for whatever reason, our political parties do not bring us the best and the brightest. They bring us the worst of the trash of America, and they end up becoming our leaders. So I think somewhere along the line, we need to reform how we elect our officials. It seems to me that right now the parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, dominate what's going to be served. In other words, when I go to a meal, my wife wants a filet mignon. Instead, we're getting ground beef, and we're getting 3-day-old,
But would you just reform here in the U.S., or would you reform across the world? Because France is going to do the Paris Olympics and everything, and apparently, I know we were earlier talking about the water protests that were going on in Spain and everything, but apparently in France, and I think the Los Angeles Times has reported this as well, some people that are wanting to protest are literally protesting with poop, which I know Rick will love, because that means that they are protesting.
So the Seine River runs through Paris.
Paris, right?
It's pretty dirty, the way major urban rivers can be. And they're planning on holding, a lot of events.
The Olympic, and you're right. They're going to swim in basically polluted river.
And the president of France is scheduled to take a swim in the Seine to show that it's safe. And as a protest, they organized hundreds of people to stand on the banks of the Seine and poop into the river.
Well, and also that doesn't prove it safe. See, this is absolutely ridiculous. What proves it safe is science. In other words, what they need to do is have somebody that has a background in that, and basically what they need is that person to do a determination whether or not it's safe. What you don't need is somebody to go swim in the river to make sure it's safe. But what I'm saying about the United States is that our selection process is absolutely horrible. I mean, if you look at the NFL draft, they get the best and the brightest. The NBA draft, the best and the best players in the world. The legal profession, they call out all the trash and they get the best people to work at the major law firms. In other words, throughout the whole United States, a lot of the top people are top people. Then you go to the political system, and we get the worst of the worst.
But speaking of the best of the brightest, we still have the best of the brightest and everything. Because this is actually today is actually coming back to sports. Today is actually the day of the All-Star game, the MLB All-Star game. And while I do follow some baseball, I don't follow as much as maybe I did in the past because I do root for my Brewers and all along those lines. But there are some people in the sports world that will argue that that the skill sets are not as good as they used to be and everything. They might think that some of the older players were better players. I'm not saying that they are right or wrong, but there are some people that would probably argue that and all along those lines. Because you say that they skill sets are good and that we get the best and the brightest in the various sports, but definitely there are people that even make that argument, because I've even heard some people that talk about the WNBA and talk about how that is a more truer version of basketball than say what the NBA is and all along those lines. But I don't know what your thoughts are, because definitely today is the day of the 16th that we will have the All-Star game. And the other thing I was going to say, because Walter Football, which we also air on the network, was talking, and they were having a conversation, I think that was 2 days ago, and I was remembering that way back in the day, because the World Series will be coming up in September, October, whenever it comes up and everything, you used to be, that's when the students are in school. And when I was in school in the 70s, I literally remember, and that's what I was telling Walter, that in the chat, that you could literally get some of the games in the afternoons. There are no afternoon games now, but there used to be afternoon games where you would see the World Series literally, because one of my teachers brought the TV set in and we watched one of those games. It might have been the Braves.
The skill sets change depending on the bodies of the athletes.
Right.
The basketball and baseball in the 1930s, where you could be a professional athlete at 5 feet 10 inches. Your skill set's going to be different from a basketball player who's 7'2", and the 3-point shot has changed. You don't need to get, if you've got a reliable 3-point shooter, you don't need to get penetration. So yeah, you look at the WNBA and it seems,
but Rick, even baseball, because baseball is the only sport I know, and like I said, I love a lot of sports. I know we've had some people on the network that are baseball affiliated and everything, but baseball is, yes, there are a number of people that, because one thing that I know even Nick talks about is how obese a society is and everything. And baseball is one of the few sports that I know that you can literally get away with that. I mean, and I've been able to get away with it for a long time, because Babe Ruth was no picture of fitness and all along those lines. And definitely some of the players now, depending on which positions they're playing, are not necessarily the pictures of fitness.
Have you ever seen
I want to get a couple of points in. I'm having a lot of Wi-Fi issues today, so I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here. But
Go for it.
real quick, real quick, I want to dive in with some analysis on the Republican convention. Couple of interesting factors. I'm getting a lot of calls from the media today about J.D. Vance's wife being Indian American, and I think that's kind of interesting. Kind of the fact that they picked a younger U.S. senator who's married to a full-blooded Indian American, with one of his classmates at Yale Law School. So that's going to be interesting to see. And I think, from my take on it, I think he picked Vance because Vance is obviously the heir apparent now to the MAGA movement. May not have been the best pick electorally. I thought Nikki Haley was still going to speak it out. I think obviously with her speaking tonight at the convention, I think will probably become elected again because she started the UN ambassador role. But I don't know what you guys think. I mean, is this a? I just am curious in both Nick and Mark's perspective. Is this going to worry the Biden ticket even more, Trump Vance, or do you think it's more the same?
Well, I think what happens again shows how shallow-minded Americans are. In other words, the discussion of who is his wife and is she a, quote, Indian American is way ahead of the issues of inflation, which is important, unemployment, which is important. We have immigration problems, which are important. We have problems in Social Security that's running out of money next decade. We have problems with Medicare running out of money. We have the Russian-Ukraine problem. And all these things are brushed aside, Steve, because his running mate's wife is an Indian American. Oh, God forbid. God forbid. That's the most important thing out there. And this is the real problem that we have in the United States. Everything is based on race and sex. And even your friend Gavin Newsom, which I liked for a while, but when he said, I'm going to appoint somebody, it's going to be a black woman. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, he just slapped every white male in the United States of America. And he's your leader, by the way, Rick. He's a leader of California. And he's a racist and a sexist. And Joe Biden's the same way. And frankly, all these politicians, it's almost race and sex. That's how we're going to.
You raise a good point. But Dick, don't you believe
the flip side of that?
JFK put in. And Martin.
Well, let's go back to the race in hand. Trump walking in with a bandage in his ear, Lee Grinwood playing, proud to be an American. I mean, it seemed like this was just such a.
I'm proud to be an Indian American. I'm proud to be an Hispanic American.
No, but
well, hold on a second.
The energy was really powerful in that room.
Hold on a
the
second.
energy was really powerful in that room. I mean, I think Trump is going to win this election.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm ready to just give him the election this soon and everything. I could see a landslide possibly and everything, but I do have a question for everybody, and it kind of counters to what you were asking me and everything, because I don't know that J.D. Vance brings anything to the independence, because I do think that that's what the swing vote will be, because I don't know that the J.D. Vance selection is going to swing any of them to change their vote or to go one way or the other. So I don't think that this is enough of a campaign. I don't think many of the millennials care that he's a fellow millennial or along those lines, because they're going to be looking at his stances. And apparently he's also, like a lot of politicians, he's waffled, because he definitely was a never Trumper and now he's a pro Trumper and everything. So I don't know that I can't see anything that is going to bring a lot of votes in by this particular selection and all along those lines. I could be proven wrong and everything, but I'm not seeing enough of that. And to Nick's point, and I'm kind of somewhat pushing back on him and everything, I don't care who it was, and I think I started paying attention back in the Watergate era and everything. There is always a deep dive into the backgrounds of the candidates, whether it's a vice president or a president. And yes, they do look at their family, they do look at who they're married to, they do look at their school background and everything. So this is nothing new. It's even before I was born that they were doing this as well. So for us to pretend like this is a new thing is a false argument in my mind, because this is definitely something that they've been doing for years. As people were asking about Spiro Agnew, and they were asking about people even before I was born and their vice presidential candidates. Shucks, I think people were asking about Adlai Stephens and everything. So we can't say that they do not do a deep dive, even when they're picking.
They're not going to find anything on Vance. Vance is clean. He had a movie. Ron Howard made a movie out of Hillbilly Elegy, which is his autobiography. So, it's all out there.
Yeah, but the key selection for Trump, he needs to find somebody who's a obsequious sycophant. So in his mind, if you fill out those two, you check those two boxes, you're obsequious and you're a sycophant.
Which he is. Because in 2016, J.D. Vance sent an email to a friend saying he can't decide whether, whether Trump is a con man like Nixon or America's Hitler. And
Yeah.
Trump loves it when if Vance is willing to apologize and like kiss ass and
There you go.
disavow his earlier statements, Trump loves that.
That's right. Yeah. In other words, now that he worships Trump, then everything's okay. But the key thing is, will he be there in the next 4 years? So there's a couple things will happen if they get elected. Will JD Vance be there for the next 4 years, or will something happen the next 4 years and JD Vance actually assumes the presidency? Because remember, that's a long haul, and you don't have a young man in office. Donald Trump is what, 77?
78.
78. Okay, so he's going to be 82 years old. He's going to be in his 80s, and I think Biden was in better shape than Trump is. Okay, so the thing is he going to make it those next 4 years? So there's a lot yet to be said about what's going to happen. And the other problem is, will JD Vance be able to get along with Donald Trump? Will they be able to have their bromance for 4 years? So we don't know that either. So there's a lot of questions yet.
Well, there's a lot of questions, including questions as to, because I have heard a lot of people that are ready to anoint it President Trump for 2024. And while it is July 16th, and while it does have a strong support, and while they're among his base, and while there are a number of people that were concerned about the assassination attempt and a number of other things there, it does look like it is his to lose. But I have seen people that have blown some leads, including some leads in the various sports and everything. So I'm not ready to declare the victory to Trump as of yet and everything. So like I said,
Yeah, we don't know. The polls are not very helpful this time around. 538.com, which is a poll aggregator. They look at all the polls combined, says Trump has a 52% chance to win. I think that was before the assassination attempt, but still, it's you can't tell at this point.
Yeah, but what is the move on the chessboard going to be for the Democrats? Are they going to hold pat? Are they going to stay?
I think so, because Biden is adamant about not quitting. He's doing a ton of public appearances.
Right.
And if we're Biden to leave, you would have, that would cost them weeks and weeks while they pick a new candidate.
Yeah. Well, it's like you're playing blackjack. If you ever play blackjack and you just drew a 16, which is what they drew. They have a 16. Do you hit and try to get to 21, or do you fold, or do you hold? It looks like they're two cards. They're 16. They're holding 16. Yeah. And that means that if they hold, they could be in deep trouble. I mean, so we'll see what the next move on the chessboard is. My thinking is, here's my thinking. In troubled times, you actually have to play very aggressively. And really, what the next move on the chessboard is, Biden should resign from office.
He's not going to do that. I've already talked to people.
I'm not going to say he's going to do it. I'm saying that's the best move on the board. And the reason why it will elevate Kamala Harris to become president of the United States and make her the front runner for the Democratic convention.
Yeah, I think Nick raises a good point. I mean, I think that we all of these Democrats that keep saying, let's nominate someone else, it's not going to be someone else. It's going to be Vice President Harris, because they can't pass the Vice President of the United States. It's the second highest office in the land. And then they would alienate women of color and all of that. But I think at the end of the day, it's not going to happen. It's Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. And I think that, it's going to be an interesting race. I think Ohio would have gone to Trump anyway. So it might not have been the best strategic move from an electoral college play. But at the same token, the age of J.D. Vance, 39, the connection with liberal-leaning venture capitalists in California, his business background and his military service, combine all of that, could and somebody that's so much younger that if something were to happen to Trump. But I felt an energy in that room that I haven't felt when I watched on TV, that like the 1980 convention with Ronald Reagan. I mean, shining city on a hill. Nobody's talking on that side about his 57 felony convictions.
They're not going to talk about it on that side. That'll be the Democrats that will talk about that. But then again, you also have to wonder, because my understanding is the theme, and it is the theme that maybe some people will like and some people will resonate with. But there are some people, including those that are struggling, that will also take this as a slap in the face, because apparently the theme for the convention is not a "Make America Great," but "Make America Wealthy Again." So there are some people that are wondering about that, because that definitely plays to something else that we sometimes talk about on this network, which is the class divide. So we're talking about making America wealthy again. How do you make America wealthy again and not address the needs of those that are in the middle class? And definitely, what are you going to do for the poor as well? Because Make America Wealthy Again, just the name alone sounds like you are catering towards some of the more wealthy people and all along those lines. So that just the title alone could be problematic in my mind from a electability standpoint and all along those lines, because I'm sure the Democrats are going to play off of that and all along those lines. But that is literally the theme. It's called Make America not great again, but wealthy again.
The conventions are less important than they used to be, because like the Emmys and the Oscars, all of America used to tune in when there were only 3 networks. Now there's a bunch of other stuff to do. And in 2020, only about 8% of Americans tuned into the conventions, which was down from 2016, which had close to 10% of Americans tuning in. So this time around, maybe 7% of Americans will watch the conventions.
Wow, that's really pretty low. But what I think we need to do is, at least I think the Democrats need to do, they're going to need to make a real powerful move on the chessboard after the RNC convention. I believe they're not going to do it because people don't like to change, and they're going to just ride this all the way down. They're going to ride the dead.
Well, what Biden can do and is doing is giving everybody ice cream. He can do executive orders to give people stuff. He just announced an executive order to cap rent increases across America at 5%. If you try to raise he just did it today.
How can he do that?
He said so. Here's you don't. He said,
John McEnroe said you cannot be serious.
No, here's what he said.
They kept it before. They kept it before.
Let me explain. He said if you raise rents more than 5% a year, then you don't get certain federal tax deductions.
And Nick, you said it can't be done, but they did it during the pandemic because they capped it. Because I know here at the apartment that I live, they capped the amount, and so there have been some caps that have been done over the last several years because of the complaint that people have about housing is that the rents are going up constantly and everything, and that also a lot of times the landlords don't even live in the city and states where they are. The apartments are at, because I know even here. There have been a number of people that have capped these things on a regular basis.
Brother, what a moron! That just shows Biden is more of a moron that could possibly. He's never been a landlord before. See, I've been a landlord and a renter. I've been on both sides of the street. Let me tell you something. Sometimes you come in and you actually charge very little rent because you're looking for good tenants. But then you need to raise them up because your real estate property taxes go up. And then you got a guy like Joe Biden who jumps in and says you can't raise them more than 5%. This just shows what a complete moron Joe Biden is.
But the flip side of that is that if there are people that are gouging the population, then that's what he's thinking. So would you not agree that there are people that are gouging the population? Because that's where he's getting the race at and trying to cap it, because there are a number of people that are gouging their renters. I've seen it not just here in North Carolina.
They do it all the time. I hate landlords. Are you kidding me? One of my most least favored groups, to the extent I almost don't even take them as clients, is real estate landlords. I don't want anything to do with that group, Mark. So it's because they grow up reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and how to nickel dime every tenant out there. They're just disgusting people. So don't get me started on that.
You know what I find interesting? Even though I'm the longest serving Indian American in the state, apparently Mark Robinson took a whole delegation of Indians with him to the Republican convention. There was a whole busload of Indians from Cary and Morrisville. They're all with the lieutenant governor, and they were there. Yeah. They were there with him last night when he was speaking.
No, he's definitely trying to appeal.
The solution isn't to punish those landlords, because I've been a landlord too. I had a lot of real estate property. You just need to build more housing. build
want to hear
more
from Kimberly
affordable
Calhoun, but real quickly, what I'll say is that the problem at hand, and then I'm going to hand it over to her. The problem at hand is that the economy isn't getting better in the wallets of the people of this country in terms of the groceries, the rents, the housing, and that's the issue at hand. Because the Biden administration has been unable to articulately communicate to the American people that unemployment is down, 50 million new jobs have been created. But what do they have? They've got vacant office space, they've got high prices. And so that's the issue at hand is it's a marketing play. So now Trump is able to this is a referendum on Biden. This election is a referendum on Biden.
Yeah, it's also government policy. I mean, if you look at what's going on, America's wealthy again. The wealthier people are wealthier. Okay, if you're on the right side of the road, Steve, you're doing better. Okay, if you're on the left side of the road, you're not doing better. And our policies aren't designed to help those people. Did you hear anything? Biden saying we're going to give tax cuts for the middle class? Did you hear him say anything like that? No, because he doesn't give a rat's rear about the middle class. Do you hear him say tax cuts for the lower class? No, he doesn't do it. Yet Trump is going to jump in there. He's going to give tax cuts for the upper class. And that's what's going to happen. And, it's really disgusting. So if you're rich, you're going to get richer. If you're poor, you're going to get poorer because our policies are not designed to help poor people or the middle class.
And you stimulate economic growth by stimulating the middle class, right? And so that's a great point, guys. I think that's really what it's about. I think at the end of the day, Democrats have to get back on message about the economy. They got to get away from these left of center issues. They got to get away from the fact that this what I call a Trump obsession, that he's been convicted of all these felonies. They got to get back on message that they need 4 more years in the White House of the economy. I want to hand over to Kimberly Calhoun to give the final few minutes of insight, just in terms of what she thinks of J.D. Vance. What do you think about? Is that going to be a game changer in this election? And what are your thoughts?
Yes, I think he is for various reasons. One, he has a small military background. He has very strong Christian values, and I think that will be a very strong right push. People will focus on him instead of the sins of the president. So, I think that he was selected intentionally because of those values that he tends to project. Now, whether he is those values or not, we'll find out, But I just think that he was intentionally picked for those reasons. I don't, his family and everything, the fact that he is married, I'm glad that you brought that up, to a Native American Indian. I just, I don't think that has everything to do with it, but I think his family values did. And I think that will help them out. Now, what I need help with is we're having a protest today with timeshares. Solutions or surrender. We have helped we've rescued about $1 million worth of deceptive acts by timeshares. The predatory lending that they're doing against the elderly, what they're doing with people who have military and need their good credit is just, it's not American. It's very crooked, and unfortunately, Trump had a big hand in the laws that changed that have hurt the victims of timeshares, and so we're fighting that on a daily basis because he owns timeshares. So of course, if he's in the president's seat, he's going to do that. But at 11:30 today, please, go watch us. We're having a competition. I'm looking for good posters for timeshare protest. We will put it on a product and send it to the winner, like a mug or a t-shirt. I'll share one that we have right now if anyone wants to see it. I'm pretty proud of it. I did it last night because our artwork didn't show up. But you know, I think all in all, there's a lot of problems going on out there, and if we want them fixed, we need to stop relying on the government and the president and start doing it ourselves. We are the government, and we have forgotten that. That's what needs to happen.
Well, I can't make it 11:30. I would love to, but I thank you all for everything that you're doing, Kimberly. And tonight, we look forward to seeing you on World Politics, where we're going to be continuing our discussion about the presidential election, what's going on globally, and also the international perception of this election. Because I think a lot of people are looking at the United States right now going, what is going on? And returning to some normalcy. I know all of us are getting so tired. Hopefully these elections will be over soon and we can get on to doing the business of our nation, right? But we'll see you, Kimberly. Hopefully you'll be with us this evening, 5 o'clock, right?
Well, I'm on the road, but I'm going to try.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, and I'll do my best to try to make it 11:30, but if not, send us information. And want to thank you for stepping up and as always helping our community. Folks, we've had a wonderful hour with you on World Edition. We'll be back tomorrow and keep up watching the Republican convention. More coverage tonight as former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and Governor of South Carolina. She'll be speaking this evening at the convention and presidential candidate. Thank you all so much.